Hello, this is Christina Yonkman, and I'm going to share my case study for EDL 853 Special Education for Building Administrators. And this case study is when a student's rights are wronged. So I'm going to share with you the facts that I know, what has happened and where it happened. A sophomore player, Miguel, moved to Nottingham High School. His family moved to Dover, which is the community, because of their academic program and the football team. He is one of the most talented and devoted quarterbacks, and he actually got to start varsity as a sophomore. So he is an extremely very talented football player. He was actually injured at a football game and is now required to use a wheelchair. He will be returning to school after several months of rehabilitation and after his doctor has given him orders that he can return. The student has been removed from a college prep biology class, which he was enrolled in before the sports injury. And the student's parents have requested a meeting with the principal. Actually, the mother requested a meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, both the father and the attorney joined the meeting in the principal's office. So we're going to talk about who was involved and what did they really have to say about the situation. We're going to start with Miguel, since this case study is about him. He is our sophomore student. He was very eager to return to school, and he felt he would do fine in school without any additional accommodations outside of him being in his wheelchair. Miss Guzman is the school counselor. She assured Miguel's parents that he would be welcome back to school, and at one point, there was a conversation that he would have his regular schedule when he returned. But when Miguel returned, she did inform him that his science class had to be changed due to the biology class not being wheelchair accessible. And there's myself. I'm Miss Yonkman, the school principal. I do acknowledge that Miguel is very committed to the high school and the football program. In fact, the day he returned, there was a little celebration and in honor of him. I did agree to meet with Miguel's mother. And so then we go to Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez. That would be Miguel's parents. They did request to meet with the principal. They did ask why he was denied access to his biology class after he was told he would have the same schedule. They also were not informed of the change in his schedule, and they demanded that he be reinstated into that biology class because it is a college requirement for a pre-requirement for college. We are going to talk about the next person, who is Howard Carey. That's Miguel's attorney. The attorney did let the principal know that there is definitely a problem, and they questioned me about if I understood the school's understanding of the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, if I knew about FAPE, which is free and appropriate education, free and appropriate public education. They also ask if I understood the implications of denying him access to the classroom. So as far as reporting any legal or ethical issues here, I do believe that there was legal and ethical concern with the counselor changing his schedule. Number one, he was reassured that he would have the same schedule. Number two, he didn't know about it till the day he returned. And number three, the parents were not involved at all in that decision. As far as a 504 or an IEP, that should have been considered when Miguel returned to school. And that is something we didn't have a lot of detail on, but it definitely should have been discussed before his return. He does qualify for services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and he also qualifies for services under the Americans with Disabilities Act, since he does use a wheelchair. He also has a right to, which we already talked about, the free and appropriate public education, just like any other student in the school, even though he has a disability. And then there was some discussion in the case study about whether there was financial liability on the high school or the opposing football team. From what I understand through our athletic department is everyone signs a waiver when they play. So I do not believe Nottingham High would have any liability. However, there may be some type of financial or some liability there with the opposing team if the family pushed that issue. There again, depending on all the details of the accident on the field, we don't know exactly what happened. So as far as my statement on what happened here, a sophomore student that uses a wheelchair has been removed from a college prep biology class that is not handicap accessible. He, his family, and his attorney are demanding that he be placed back into the class since he is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. So now we're going to talk about the facts and some of the things that we do not know. Let's start with the people. We obviously know the parents are involved, and that was stated as far as the people that we were talking about. As far as teachers, we don't know a lot about the biology teacher or any other teachers in the building. We do know that there was another football team involved, obviously, when they were playing. Building administration, we know that I am the principal, but we don't know if there's any other like SPED directors or assistant principals or anything. District administration, we do know that the case study did mention Dr. Harvey, who is our superintendent, and he has a really good working relationship with staff in the community and is very supportive of the school and sports. As far as other district administration, we don't know if there is a SPED director in the district. Has personnel been involved as far as any legal issues? And also on administration, is there an athletic director that is not mentioned in the case study? So those are all things as far as people that we either know or do not know. We do know the student demographics of the school as far as the school size, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, but we don't know a lot about ethnicity or anything like that. There wasn't a whole lot of detail on demographics. However, we do know that they have a very supportive community. Friday night football is their love, and they are all very supportive of that. We do know, as far as the place, it's at Notting Hill High. Gosh, I can't even talk. Nottingham High School. They are a large high school with 3,200 approximate students. It's the central hub of their Dover community. And what we did find out in the beginning of the case study is that when they did some remodeling, about a fourth of the high school remained ADA non-compliant due to lack of funding. We also know that other buildings in the district, there's 6 elementary and 2 middle schools in addition to the 1 high school. So that's what we know as far as the school size and the school location and the reconstruction projects where we talked about when a fourth of it was not ADA compliant. Where meetings were held, we do know that they talked about the principal's office, but that's all. We're assuming the counselor's office is where Miguel and the counselor met. And then we don't know anything really about the classroom design of the biology room, except for we know it's not ADA compliant, but that's all we know. We don't know if it's upstairs, if it's on a main level. We don't know if it's the doors that's not accessible, or if it's the actual lab that's not low enough to be accessible. There's a lot of details we don't know. As far as programs, we do know that the community is very supportive, like I said, and we don't know a whole lot about other clubs or groups besides we know football is a big, important part of the high school. We don't know a whole lot about the biology curriculum. However, we do know it is a prerequisite for college. We don't know much about the school budget, besides that the district did run out of money when they were working on their ADA compliance. As far as school policies, we don't have a lot of detail there or what kind of special ed services are available. In fact, we don't know anything about special ed department or teachers. So those would be all things that would be helpful to know. So let's review and prioritize our information. Of course, the very top of my priority list is, in this case, Miguel as a student. And I also want to include future students here because this could set a precedent for other students that may have disabilities. Then we're going to go in and we're going to make sure that staff is involved and notified and communicated with, as well as Miguel's parents or any parents in the future. We want to make sure we keep all of them up to date and informed so that they know what is happening. From there, we're going to look at the school administration side. And of course, we're going to work closely with Dr. Harvey. We're going to work with our Board of Education or any other district admin that is available. And then we also want to make sure we include the family attorney and any other community. We just want to make sure the community is aware, because they are so supportive, that of course we can't give details as far as confidentiality, but as far as ADA compliance and everything, the community needs to be assured that the school is working to remedy that. And one last thing I want to mention over on the staff and administration side would be if the school district has a school attorney, which I am assuming that they would. Okay, so the next section we're going to talk about is identifying our options and possible consequences. So the first option I have, it's kind of two combined into one. Number one, we could do nothing and we could just make Miguel take the other class that we have put him in and move forward. Or we could do nothing, support the decision, and like I said, move on from there. The second one would be kind of like a second part of that. We're not really doing anything except for referring it on to the school district attorney. And so that would be both 1 and 2 would be just kind of like the principal, myself, we're just not doing anything, or we're referring it on. The third option would be to meet with Miguel and his parents and both attorneys, the district and the student's attorney, and any staff that would need to be involved, and work on a 504 IEP plan to get in place to ensure Miguel's well-being and success. Now, again, we don't have much information besides, I know the case study mentioned that they felt like Miguel would be fine with everything except for having to use a wheelchair. So I really feel like in our district that I'm currently in, we would look at writing a 504 instead of an IEP, because I don't believe there are specific things that would warrant the IEP in this case as far as academic or other things. So we would look at a 504. And then number 4, we would consider other options, and things that I mean here would be we could either move the whole biology class to another classroom that was handicap accessible. We could look at some other opportunities as far as possibly offering it virtually for Miguel. That would be kind of a temporary fix, because there again, he's still not getting to be right in the classroom with all of his other peers. And so that could go against some laws there, but at least it would be an option temporarily. And so those are all things that we need to consider, what would be in Miguel's best interest as far as his well-being and success. So as we evaluate our options here, what laws and regulations do we need to consider? We need to look at both local, federal, and state laws. How are we going to ensure the well-being and future success of Miguel and any other students in the future? That's our top priority. How can we make sure and develop a supportive, equitable, and inclusive school culture for Miguel? And how are we going to ensure the success of our school staff during all of this transition? And then last, we need to also make sure that all stakeholders are involved and communicated with. So let's look at the pros and cons of each. The first one is if we do nothing, that would avoid immediate conflict and does not disrupt the classroom, and we would be supporting staff in this case as far as the counselor and the biology teacher. However, cons would be it's a definite legal risk, because we are going against several laws that I had mentioned earlier. It is definitely an ethical concern because it's not in the best interest of the student. It affects both staff and Miguel and future students, and it violates several policies that we've already talked about. The second option would be I could refer the situation to our district attorney for the school. This would protect everyone involved. The school would have support and resources as needed. We would reinforce policies. This would be an ethically correct way to go. It does ensure Miguel's well-being and success and promotes that he is treated equal and inclusive in our school. And it advocates for both the staff and the student needs, and it would show that there is good leadership and communication. However, some cons would be, as a principal, my admin could question if I'm an inclusive leader, and they would question my leadership and my professionalism of our staff. There would be some difficult conversations and decisions, and depending on what the attorney does and having to pay for the attorney, it could also be costly. So plan C would be to collaborate, and this would be working with the family and Miguel and their attorney. There again, the school would have support and resources because our attorney and admin would be involved. It can reinforce our policies. It is ethically correct. It does ensure Miguel's well-being and success and promotes that he is treated equally and inclusive in our school. It does advocate for staff and our student needs. It shows good inclusive leadership skills as a leader from me. It is promoting communication among everyone, and it supports not only Miguel and his family, but any future students and families. The con can be that this could be very time consuming. There's going to be some difficult conversations and decisions that we have to make, and it does require a lot of organization and scheduling to get all parties together, and it can be costly as far as the attorneys or possibly some of the actions that we choose to proceed with. And then D would be consider other options, and that was either moving the classroom completely or making a temporary fix with a virtual option. This could ensure Miguel's success and well-being because he will still get his college prep class, which he needs, because if we don't offer that, that is a legal issue. It does not interrupt the classroom if they're all getting to be moved to one area or possibly have him Zoom in. And it does show innovation and communication among all parties involved. The cons, there can be legal liability because we're maybe not necessarily following everything as far as the free and appropriate education and treating him equally and inclusive. There's going to be some uncomfortable conversations, and again, it can be costly because there may be technology set up, or if we need to move the classroom, there could be cost involved there. Okay, let's move on to section 8. We're going to choose the best option here. And when I started looking at the different options here, I definitely want to look at my district board policy. I'm going to refer to our local state policies and laws. Collaborate with my district admin, which would be Dr. Harvey, and the school's attorney. We're going to collaborate and work with our district facilities as far as possible changes to the classroom. And we're going to consider the best option for Miguel and any future students. And we're going to explore and consider all options out there. And I'm going to make sure there's a lot of communication with all stakeholders before a decision is made. So I chose to go with Plan C, which is collaborating with all involved. And there are some immediate things that are going to need to happen here. I'm going to, first of all, notify my district admin, the school attorney, our plant facilities, and probably our board president, not necessarily the entire board, but just make sure that they're aware of what is going on. I am going to look at all of our district, state, and federal laws, policies regarding the free and appropriate public education. And again, I want to move back to the IDEA and the ADA. So the IDEA requires all children with disabilities have a free and appropriate public education, even if they have special ed services. We need to have supports that meet their individual needs. The goal is for all students to graduate ready for employment, and that's where this college prep class comes in. And the IDEA, the IDEA states that students with disabilities should receive the same preparation as those without disabilities. So those are all things I considered when choosing this plan. We're going to look at the architectural changes for the classroom. There's going to be a lot of things to look at here, but depending on the lab and the classroom, does it just need a bigger doorway? Does it need a lower table or desk, or a lab that is lower for Miguel when he is in his wheelchair? Is it just a ramp that needs to be put in to get him to the room, and then everything else inside the room is ADA compliant? Those are things that we don't really know, but those are things that we're going to look at, and we're going to include our plant facilities on this. And then, of course, we're going to look at other room options. Maybe there is another science lab that would be ADA compliant, that we could just make a simple schedule switch. That would be the easiest and the most ideal. But again, we don't know all those details, so those are the two options that I would look at. We are definitely going to keep in communication with Miguel and his parents and his attorney, and our school's attorney will communicate with the attorney and make sure that they know what is being worked on and when we meet and everything. We are going to keep our staff informed, and in addition to that, we're going to make sure that they are educated, because we want to make sure we prevent any teacher liability here. We are going to discuss 504 and IEP options with school staff. And again, in our district, I believe a 504 would be chosen here. So we would schedule that meeting, and we need to make sure we follow all parental rights and that all the proper paperwork and notification and signatures and everything is all followed as far as the policy there. We will hold the 504 meeting with the required people and plan out accommodations for Miguel. And then last on this immediate action, we would notify staff about the 504 plan and get their signatures and make sure they are all aware of any accommodations that he needs. And again, this could go beyond the science classroom since he is using a wheelchair all day. So it may be involving more than just the biology teacher. So then throughout the school year, I'm going to continue to support the teachers to ensure that the 504 is being followed and that Miguel is receiving his equitable education. We're going to regularly check in with Miguel to ensure his well-being and success. And we're going to follow up and continue communicating with Miguel, his parents, and any attorney at that point if needed. We are going to continue to provide training for staff and the board regarding FAPE, IDEA, ADA compliance, IEPs, and 504s to make sure that everyone is knowledgeable on all of those. And then, of course, we're going to schedule the yearly 504 meeting as required and follow all parental rights as needed. So as I'm looking through this plan, what may happen? There could be several things. Miguel's parents and attorney may refuse to collaborate. They may say, no, it's too late, we're suing, and we're not going to sit down and collaborate and come up with a solution. The staff could possibly not follow the 504, which creates teacher liability. The district could face legal ramification for going against some of these laws. District admin may question my leadership on why I wasn't more involved when Miguel returned and working with a counselor. Trainings could possibly not be attended by staff or board. And then funding may not be available to remodel to meet the ADA compliance, like we talked about, lowering the desk or the table or adding a ramp or whatever the need may be. So if that happens, my plan B would be to make sure we involve our personnel department and school attorney as needed. We would schedule training during building in-service instead of just optional trainings so that teachers are required to attend. And I know we found in our district and building, it helps when you have your own staff plan and teach the trainings. Teachers seem to enjoy that training better than someone from the outside coming in. And we are going to reassure Miguel and his parents and collaborate together in whatever process we go through. And then we could possibly research for grants to help fund the remodel if there is not funding there. And then the last, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I think it was actually the last section of the case study. Throughout my presentation, I did share the important words from the standards, and those were in the bright red, so you would notice that as I was going through the presentation. So here are my resources. I'm going to move this a little bit so you can see that bottom one. Okay, those are the references I used. Found some of my own, but I also went and used a lot that I had learned throughout this whole course. And then there's one more page of references. There we go. So that is my case study. I appreciate your time. Thank you.